And my name is Sarah Pinder. I'm the Resource Services Manager at Michigan Nonprofit Association. Again, thank you for joining us for this overview of a new member benefit and really interesting program that should help to make your life easier in the management of your nonprofit with an overview of the Constellation HR software today. As you can see from our scrolling PowerPoint here in the beginning, MNA has lots of upcoming events. A couple I want to highlight. We do have a fundraising webinar series coming up, specifically email fundraising, that starts on November 3rd, but there's a free introductory webinar for that series on October 27th. So check that out if you're interested in email fundraising. Also, November 6th starts a series with a partnership with California State Association for Nonprofits on an overhead myth. You might have heard about that, talking about getting enough money in your grant proposals and such to pay for your organization's overhead costs. So check that out. It starts on Friday, November 6th. We are also running an in-person series, a three-part series in Kalamazoo on understanding bias in nonprofit organizations starting on Thursday, November 5th. And then we'll have a third webinar in this series on goal setting for executives and organizations on Monday, November 16th. So as always, check out all of the upcoming events and other happenings on MNA's webpage, www.mnaonline.org, or reach out to us if you're interested in learning more. And without any further ado, I am going to hand over controls and introduce Jennifer Welch from Constellation HR and Donahue and Associates, and welcome her to the webinar this morning, and she'll be taking us through demonstration and giving us lots of great information. Jennifer?
Thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to take a second here and thank you everyone for participating in the webinar. We're really excited about our partnership with MNA to promote our performance management and compensation software. So I just wanted to start and give a little background about J.H. Donahue and Associates along with Constellation HR. So Donahue and Associates has been around since 1983, and over the years we have worked with both nonprofit and for-profit organizations in consulting in a variety of HR topics. About the mid-'80s, we began to specialize in compensation, which did include performance systems. And over the years, we have seen what's worked and what hasn't worked with our clients in regards to successful performance management systems. And so we started creating the systems from the ground up for our clients to meet their needs. We wanted to enhance our system as well as streamline the process. So we decided to develop a cloud-based software program called Constellation HR. Now, a little background, we never started out to develop a software program. Software development wasn't necessarily something that we had always planned to do. Our field was mostly HR. But so we went out into the market. There's a lot of big name performance management systems out there. And so we wanted to find one that we could recommend confidently to our clients to use for their systems to solve the problems that we kept running across. Well, after doing some research, we decided that there was nothing out there that we found that met our requirements. So they did a nice job to streamline the process, but at the end of the day, they still weren't addressing the issue that we kept running across, which was basically everything was very subjective. So obviously there's never going to be a perfect system because there's still that human factor, but our goal was to create a program as objective as possible. So we wanted to create something that was easy to use along with streamline the process. And Constellation HR allows managers and employees to access the system from anywhere and anytime. But we really wanted to accomplish something that addressed, like I said, the issue of subjectivity within the appraisal process. Over and over, our clients kept telling us that they would have issues with their managers manipulating the system or playing the numbers game in order to produce the desired results before the managers ever even rated the employees. And that way, the managers also weren't having honest conversations about performance. As an employee, you know that you don't want to hear the words meeting expectations. But from a management side, it's okay that the majority of your employees are meeting expectations. And let's be honest, having to tell your employees that they're just meeting expectations doesn't do much for employee morale. So when we created Constellation HR, we wanted to address the problems with the traditional performance management systems and those certain buzzwords that just didn't sit well with employees. So we went ahead, and our solution to the problem was to develop a narrative-based system. So we created a narrative-based performance appraisal system called Authentic Review. Managers will be working with the numbers that, managers will be only working with the descriptive phrases for each performance factor. So while the numbers are still calculated in the background, each performance factor has between 6 to 8 descriptions of performance for each of the performance or compensable factors that the manager can select. And then the descriptions are weighted behind the scenes. So we still needed to add the numbers to the system in order to apply the merit budget, but by removing the numbers from the front-end process, managers are forced to rank their employees based on their actual performance, as well as the narrative method gives managers specific descriptions of performance. So managers then are required to write comments for each factor, and the comments should show examples of how the employee's performance matches the description that they selected. The text for each description will give managers a word track to begin the discussion with the employees. So the managers at the end of the day have less descriptions in writing that they'll have to do on their own. They'll use the topic as a starter, and then they'll be able to describe it from there. We've also found that this helps to improve rating consistency between managers within the organization. So a lot of times with a system that rates, for example, unacceptable through excellence, or 1 through 5, 1 through 4, there can be a lot of room for interpretation as what one manager's definition of meeting expectations is as opposed to another manager's. So this way, without having to have the managers determine what a meeting expectation is, and based on a specific description, we can level set the organization to try and create more consistency throughout departments and throughout managers. So when creating Constellation HR, we wanted to be able to take the 30 years plus of experience and bottle it into a neat and efficient package. So we created a job factor library to include factors that we have found to be the most effective throughout the year. We have over 120 factors in the library. All the factors are set up with between the 6 to 8 descriptions for the narrative method. So what we do when we set up a system with a client is we actually sit down with each company, discuss the different departments. Every department or job title or job can actually have a different set of factors to customize it for the work that's actually being completed. So we sit down and we help to decide which factors would be best for each of the positions based on our experience and what the organization's goals and mission is looking for, as well as each factor is weighted. So if you've ever had the issue where an employee who should be on a corrective action plan, but they get a meeting expectations on their performance appraisal, well, we see that happen a lot as well. And so by weighting each factor, the key factors will have a higher weight and importance, so the performance score will be more accurate to the results based on their actual performance. Another common issue that we run into with a traditional was self-appraisal. Now, this is where an employee rates themselves on the same form that the manager is going to rate themselves on. And the problem arises when the employee and the manager's rates differ from each other. So this can frequently result in difficult conversations for managers with employees when the employee feels that they're on an exceeding expectations level, and while the manager has to sit down and tell them that they need improvements. So especially for newer managers, that's a really difficult conversation to have. Sometimes they can do more damage than good at the end of the day with that conversation. So our tested solution is called what we call an employee input form. So an employee input form is an open-ended form that a company can customize to give employees a place to express themselves, as well as gather information that is helpful to managers while completing their performance appraisals. So we have templates that we recommend, or if a company is trying to gather some information, maybe almost do kind of a little climate survey, this can incorporate that into the system as well. We also find that it's really helpful for managers to be aware of potential issues that the employee may have. A lot of times they're discovered with these employee input forms, so that the manager can better prepare for the conversation when they sit down and talk to the employee about performance, instead of being blindsided about these issues that they weren't aware of. So as well as having a narrative method, we also have a built-in merit planning module. So this is included in the system, and as I mentioned before, all of the numbers are calculated behind the scenes, and the reason that we did that was to be able to distribute the merit budget. So now we understand that all organizations might not have the ability to give merit increases every year, and that's okay. The merit module can easily be turned on and off depending on the year. The software will then provide a custom merit recommendation for each employee. So it's a pretty sophisticated model that we built into the system. The way that it works is it takes 5 key factors into consideration. The first one would be the employee's performance score that's calculated and automatically transferred into the merit planning system, the employee's current salary, the employee's position within the salary range, the built-in merit increase model. So this is a model that the system is built in based on, we set it to a default on what we normally see, and it can be customizable. So for example, if your organization has a lot of employees that are on the lower end of the pay range but higher performance, we can adjust that model so that the recommendations help to bring the employees closer to the market rates for the positions. And then the final factor would be the budget, the merit increase budget. And so the budget would be a percent of the payroll. We can also have different budgets for different departments or business units. So if one unit had a more successful year or on average brings in more revenue, they can get a larger percent of the merit increase amount. Okay, and then along with the merit, we also have a goal tracking system in the program that's included as well. So it's been proven that all organizations need goals. It's a proven fact that without goals, most companies would either stay stagnant or decline. So in other words, there's little to no growth. So it's critical for organizations to set goals, but not just any goals. They have to be clear and concise goals. And it's even more important that they're able to be tracked throughout the year. So too often we see a couple situations occur when it comes to goals. The first one is that goals are created at the beginning of the year, and then they kind of get forgotten about, put on the back burner. And then as the end of the year rolls around, employees start scrambling because they haven't completed their goals. So therefore, the goals are given little to no effort. And the whole process of goal setting in general is just not taken as seriously as it should be. The other situation that we see is that the employee is working on their goals during the year, and then they go and sit down with the manager at the end of the year, and it turns out what the employee was working on wasn't what the manager was looking for. So at this point, the year's over, it's too late, and it's something that has to be addressed next year. So we wanted to address both of these issues. So first, Constellation sets up their goals in a predefined method. So when the specific goal is created and defined, the results are also defined with measurables in regards to meeting and exceeding expectations. So exceeding expectations would be more of a stretch goal. And this way, both employees and management are on the same page of what's expected for employees to complete the goals. We find with predefining the results in terms of meeting and exceeding expectations, you don't want to set a goal and then have a good year. The employee meets the goal and then they stop working on it. So with the exceeding, that stretch goal, if they did go ahead and meet that, they still are working towards that goal to improve the organization. So employees are able to track their goals over the year. Every time that they have updated or made progress on the goal, they can go and log into the system, and the system will automatically create a journal entry. They can estimate the percentage completed on that goal so that the manager can easily go in and track. This way, the managers can monitor the employee's progress throughout the year, as well as providing real-time feedback. As opposed to at the end of the year when it's too late. So this way, if the employee is doing something and the manager's not what they're looking for, that's okay. The manager can go ahead and they can correct things as they go along. So the final thing that we kind of think has really set us apart from other organizations is that we built training into the system. So a key to successful transition into a new system is definitely being able to utilize the system efficiently. So Constellation HR has built in training modules for both management and employees. And it's not only something to show the users how to log in and use the software, it trains managers and employees on how to effectively use the content of the system. So too often we see employees who have been promoted to managers with little to no additional training on the specific management responsibilities, and especially performance reviews. I mean, it's understandable. It only happens once a year. So depending on when the manager stepped into the role, it could be something that they haven't done in a while. So what Constellation HR does is there is a built-in training that the first time a manager logs into the system, they go through a little training course. And it walks managers through the best practices when it comes to performance appraisals, along with addressing the effective goals that can be measured for managers, how to set goals for their employees. So we feel that it helps with what to say, what not to say, how to go ahead and sit down, what the steps are for talking about performance, tracking it through the year with your employees. And so we also have an employee training module that's optional. Depending on how the organization wants to set up the system. So everything is customizable, whether you use something you don't, you turn it on, turn it off. So if the organization is going to allow employees to go ahead and have a process in creating their goals, which is what we recommend. It helps to get buy-in from the employees throughout the system, that there's a module that helps employees to start brainstorming how to create their own goals. So I'd just like to take a few minutes now to give you a tour of the software itself. We'll look at a manager role as well as what the employee would see, and we'll go from there. So let me just pull that up one moment here. Okay. Alrighty, so hopefully, okay, great. Alrighty, so this is the dashboard for when a manager will go ahead and log in into the software. So up here we can add your company's logo. They would see their name and easy access back to the dashboard. They can locate it right here, or the dashboard is here as well. So this is kind of, we wanted to make this system simple and easy to use, so that if with the little training that is provided before the manager logs in, that they can pretty much navigate the system on their own. So we'll start with the goals. Each manager will have a goal library. The goal library is something that they can work on creating throughout the year. So if you create a goal in the library, you can activate it, deactivate it if you wanted to, modify it, as well as you can go ahead and create goals and keep them in the system. So the manager is working on something, creates, oh, this would be a great goal for next year. Let me put it into the system so I don't forget, and then they can use it later on if they'd like. The goal library also is where you can view corporate goals. Now, what a corporate goal is something that the administrator or the corporation would go ahead and set up, and all employees within the system would be able to view corporate goals, but only the administrator of the account can track the corporate goal. So this is a good thing for an organization to put their goals in the beginning of the year, as well as this would help managers to create cascading goals based on the corporate goals. And then the corporate goals are tracked. All employees can go in and see the progress that the company is doing on the corporate goals. And then they would know, for example, if it's a revenue-based, so if it's going to fund merit planning, things like that, all employees can be on track of that throughout the year. So if we went ahead and added a new goal, you would be able to put in a goal name, and then a description of the goal, and then the definitions for meeting and exceeding expectations. You can activate the goal and then add it into the system. So it's pretty easy. It can also be modified. Now, some, especially for first time using goals, especially in this format, we could go ahead and build in a sample goal library. So not necessarily something that you could use straight out of the software, but it would go ahead and it would give you examples of different types of goals, and then managers can go ahead and modify those goals for their own employees or their own organization. So it's just kind of examples, basically, that would help to create, for the managers to create the goals. So once the goal library has been created, the next step would be to assign the goals to the manager's employees. There's a couple ways to do it. The first one would be assigning to a team. Now, this would be especially helpful if you had quite a few employees with the same job, and you were going to assign them the same set of goals and the same weights. So we don't necessarily always recommend that it's a cookie cutter where all the account managers, for example, would have the same goals, but at least you could do it as a starting point and then go in and modify from there. So you'd be able to select the employees that you wanted to assign the goals to, select the goals, as well as then you would set a due date and an expiration date for each goal. And the reason we have both dates, so the due date would be the date that the goal would be needed to be completed by. But the expiration date, we put this in here for a couple of reasons. So, for example, if it is let's say it is a security training course that has to be completed for certification for the organization. So you'd like everyone to complete it by June 1st so that we're on top of it. However, if you don't complete it by June 1st, you still have to complete it by October before the auditors come. It's a requirement, so it has to be done. So you would set the due date for the date that you wanted it due, and then the expiration date. So basically, the expiration date is when an employee can no longer go in and track their progress on the goals. As well as, let's say a goal is due on July 1st. We usually like to set the expiration date about a month later so that even if they completed the goal on time, the employee could still go in and finish up their notes before the expiration date hits, and they can no longer go in and track. So the weight would be, it would have to total 100%, so some goals would be more important than others. And you can go ahead and modify those weights further on, or set so the system would automatically calculate if you were going to go ahead and add in the weights, so they have to equal 100%. So that's the first way to go ahead and assign goals. The second way would be to go under the employees, and you can assign a goal specifically to each employee. So Laura has already had her goals assigned. So what she did is the manager went ahead and created this first goal and assigned it to her. It was the only goal that she had. But then Laura actually assigned a goal, suggested a goal to be assigned to herself. So when an employee creates a goal for themselves, it's never automatically assigned. It still has to be reviewed, and it can be edited or modified by the manager before it's approved, and then the manager has to put a weight to it. So Laura would like to be able to take a management training course in the future, and so this could be something that her manager didn't even know that Laura would like to progress into the management role. So the manager then could go ahead and assign this goal, adjust the weight from 100. Let's say this is the main goal that we want her to work on, but let's give this goal 15 or 20%, and then select a due date and expiration date, and she could go ahead and add that to the system. Now again, in this part, so tracking the goals is crucial. So you're able as a manager to see all of the updates that the employee has created in that goal. So they're able to estimate a percentage completed. So Laura said that she's 20% done with this goal. She's logged in a couple times, put some notes why she's able to. The system automatically timestamps it, so you can go in order and see her progress. So then you're notified as a manager that there's been updates on the goals. So let's say you see this 20% update, you take a look at the notes, and you're like, I'm looking for more than what this is, so you can sit down real time, have a conversation. You're really only, I would say, about 10% done. Why don't you try this, and then, it would be more closer to 20, 25%. So that way you avoid at the end of the year coming and having this conversation and the employee and the manager being on two separate pages. All right, so if we go back to the dashboard, there's a couple of different icons for goals. The goal library, the assigning goals, as well as there's My Goals. So My Goals is something that managers and employees see, and this is where they can keep track of the corporate goals, any goals that are assigned to themselves, or goals that they've assigned to themselves which are unapproved, and then they can go in and create a new goal. And then once they've created a goal, they can assign it to themselves. So we did this so that way employees can kind of brainstorm goals, and then they don't necessarily have to assign it right then and there. They can think about it, come back, but at least they have a place to put their thoughts down. So the notifications come through. We have a notifications tab. The notifications can be viewed as through the goals or appraisals. So anytime that something needs to be done in the system automatically knows that it's coming up, so it sends out reminders. So you no longer have to send out mass emails and keep on top of employees, because the system would take care of that for you. So if I go here, for example, the self-appraisal form, so that open-ended questionnaire that we were talking about, depending on how the organization sets up the time-wise, the appraisal will pop up. Usually we recommend 30 days before give employees 30 days, 15 days to complete this. So a notification will pop up saying your self-appraisal is now active, and then the employee can go in there, type in their self-appraisal. There'll be a save button or a save progress, so they can go ahead and come back and forth. They don't have to complete it all at once. Then once it's done, they don't have to email it to anyone. The system will automatically send it over to their manager with a notification that it's been completed. The other tab is for merit planning. That also is only activated at a certain time of the year. And so when that's activated, the managers can go in and see the suggested dollar amount and percentage of a merit increase based on those merit modules. And then they can also go ahead and make adjustments within their budget if that's something that the company allows. So the company has a couple different options. They can work within that merit module of all the recommendations, or they could go ahead and make adjustments within the own manager's budget. And then everything at the end of the day, any adjustments would have to be approved by the administrator, because that's something that definitely needs to be double checked before it's finalized. So this is what a manager would go ahead and see. And I'm going to log out here and show you what an employee would look like. It's quite simple, just a couple of icons here on the dashboard. So the notifications. So this notification is telling Laura that her manager, Michael, has assigned a new goal. So she knows when things have happened into the system, as well as she would get a notification when her self-appraisal was ready, and then she'd be able to go and fill it out. And then, like I mentioned, employees have their goals. So they can view the corporate goals, track their goals. So when a goal is approved and it's not before the expiration date, there's this little pen icon here, and they can go in and create a journal entry. They'll be able to see their previous comments. They can go in, say that they're 30% done, give a description about why now 30% done with goal, everything that they've done, their progress, how things are going, and when they update, and then now the manager can see that, as well as they have a track record of what they're doing. She could also go ahead and create a new goal for herself, and then assign any goals that she's created up into her, sending over to her manager. A couple other things that we have within the employee, and along with manager as well, is that the training videos that they watch the first time, they can come back and reference those at any time. It's especially helpful for the managers, maybe to reference right before they go ahead and sit down and do the performance appraisals. They can also upload documents. So managers could upload documents and create files for their employees, or employees can upload documents that they want to keep in one place that are in regard to their performance. So at the end of the year, when they go and do their self-appraisal, they want to reference specific things that happened throughout the year, maybe a thank you note that they got from a client for their great service that they provided, something like that. They could go ahead and keep it in here so that it would all be in place when they were ready to complete their self-appraisal, or the manager was ready to rate their employee. They would put a title and a description, and they could upload a document or a PDF file. Then the system also keeps records for 7 years. So if a company, for example, had needed records kept for a longer time for some sort of regulation, we can always go ahead and adjust that. The default in the system is 7 years. So the employees are able to see their history once the manager submits the form, and then they can also compare forms in appraisal history side by side, so they can see how they are improving or changing from year to year. So let me now show you what a live appraisal form would look like. So this is a Jane Smith here. She has her employee, Bob Jones, and she's ready to go ahead and complete his appraisal form. So if there's any goals assigned, the goals would be here first, and you'd be able to rate them in 4 different ways. Exceeding expectations, they met expectations based on those definitions that are predefined. If they did not meet the goal, or we have a 4th option, which is kind of an NA. So if they didn't meet the goal, but it was outside of their conditions. So let's say the goal was to get a specific grant, but that grant lost its funding, so they didn't get the grant, but it wasn't because of their efforts, it was because of situations outside of their control. So we don't want employees to be penalized for those situations. So goals can be NA'd and then just not included in the final calculation for the performance score. So as you can see here, this is what a narrative form would look like. So if we go down to, let's say, teamwork and cooperation, there's going to be a description, as well as you can see the descriptions for each of the contacts. So if the manager picks this one, displays a willingness to accept guidance, suggestions, and feedbacks without defensive or disrespectful behavior towards team members or leadership. So it says, yep, that, I've read through all these. This is what describes my employees' work the best. And then I put manager. So the goal is for the managers to use that as a starting point and kind of brainstorm from there. So they can talk about a specific situation. For example, the employee was not doing something correctly. I came to them, we had a meeting, they were really open to my feedback, and things have been working well from there. So that way, it's definitely something more concrete, less subjective than I think that you are at a acceptable teamwork and cooperation range. That leaves a lot to be determined. So you can go ahead and customize these factors. There are factors that come preloaded into each performance factor or compensable factor in the library, and then when you actually download the factors from the library into your own account, you can modify and customize any of the wording, add more descriptions, remove descriptions, and go from there. So we want to make it as customizable for each organization. Some organizations have specific word tracks that they like to use. For example, some organizations don't necessarily refer to their employees as employees, maybe as coworkers or colleagues. All of that then can be adjusted to meet the organization's culture. So managers can save their progress on the report. So if they're not finished, they don't have time, not a problem. They can come back and save their progress. Once they're done, they'll save the report, and then they go to view and submit the completed report. The reason that we made 2 steps to this was because this is where you would then print, and it would open, and then you could go ahead and print the form and take this to sit down and talk to the employee about their performance. And then there's a final submit button or an updated appraisal. So let's say you sat down with your employee and you're talking about one factor and maybe there was a miscommunication or some information was wrong and really you rated it in one way but it needed to be rated differently. So then you could go ahead and make the updates before the appraisal was finalized. Once you hit the submit for final review, two things happen. The first is that appraisal then goes ahead and the score is finalized and sent over to the merit planning module, as well as it is sent over to the employee's file as well. So we don't want a situation where an employee was able to access the appraisal before they sat down and talked with the manager. So that's why we have the second step for the final review. So you're able to sit down, make any changes that you need to, talk to the employee, and then once you finally submit it, it will go into the employee's record as well. So that is pretty much an overview of the system. It looks like we might have some questions here. Let me take a look.
Yes, we do have a couple questions, Jennifer. I don't know if you can see them or if you'd like me to read them to you.
I can see it here. Let's see. Is there a place for the employee to input a plan for the goal completion, or should it go under the goal history? So there is a notes section where an employee and a manager could sit down and strategize what they're going to do. So when you go ahead and assign the goal to an employee, you could go ahead and write an action plan out, like I want you to start with this and then go to this and do that. So there's definitely a place to put notes. And then additional notes can be added into the system as well in the goal history. But there is a place for the manager to write specific notes about how they want that to be completed. That would be, let me see here, if I can kind of minimize. Okay, so when they create, oh, let me go back to this. Okay, so when you go to the manager role, okay, and then you're able to, let's just say, assign goal. So when you hear, there's a comment section, so you could put the comments in there, and that would be something that the employee would see that would come from the manager, or the employee could put comments in the tracking history that the manager would see. So it can work both ways. Okay, let me see here. We had another question. Will the employee automatically receive emails and reminders to fill in their information? Yes, they will. So the employee's email address is put in the system as well. So there's two types of notifications. There's notifications via email, and then there's notifications through the system. So they're notified in both ways. So that's one less thing that the HR or whoever's in charge of performance management has to do, so they no longer have to send out those emails and track everyone. We also have reports. So here are the reports that a manager can run. We're always adding new reports. So a company comes to us, they're using the system and say, you know what, I'd really love to see a report that shows this and this. And we say, that's a great idea. I'm sure that other companies, so we have our developers create new reports. So we're always growing, accepting feedback, making suggestions. So if there's something in the system that you don't see that you really think would be a good asset, we are definitely open to consideration, and we can usually get those in place for you pretty quickly. So there is a report that the administrator login is where all of everything can be set up, from the pay structure all the way to what job or employee or department gets what factors, things like that. Looks like we have another question here. Does the system only handle performance and merit compensation, or are there other modules for different activities? Payroll, new hire, paperwork, etc. So right now, the system just is handling the performance and merit, so it doesn't have like an HRIS. We do have, if we go, let me go into the administrator login real quick. Depending on how detailed an organization's needs are, we do build in the employee census. So this is where all the information for an employee would be. So when you add a new employee, there's a lot of information that is able to be imported, so you don't necessarily have to put in addresses and birth dates and that kind of thing, but you're more than welcome to if you wanted to go ahead and keep this as kind of a little database. Everything can be uploaded and then downloaded via Excel. So you can keep a working Excel spreadsheet. When there's changes, upload it real quickly into the system, or download it easily if you needed the information out. So it keeps a lot of information that may be able to suffice depending as a basic tracking system, just kind of depending on what your needs would be. Let's see here. Also, too, while we're in the administrator view, I'll just take a quick second to show we can put the pay structure needs to be inputted into the system, and that's something that we will do in a new setup with a company. And so that is where the merit planning module gets all its information to make these recommendations. So there's pay levels, locations. So if, for example, your organization has maybe a couple different locations across the state. So maybe one's in Metro Detroit, one might be in Lansing, and maybe one's up north. Well, the regions, the pay structures could be different for the different locations. So what someone doing the same position in Metro Detroit, the rate would be different as opposed to if they're doing it in the Upper Peninsula. So if you have that kind of situation where you have different pay structures for different regions, we can go ahead, the system can easily accommodate that. We can add departments, divisions. So maybe if it's one parent company but two different divisions, you want to keep things separate, we can take care of that. We also have, which we are planning on developing a little bit further as well, but this is what we would kind of consider a org chart. We're looking to have it be in a printable module so it looks like an org chart, but every time you make an update to the system, it automatically changes this org chart. So the system would automatically allow you to have up-to-date org charts. We do have the ability for employees to add images. I know some companies like to do that. So the goal is to have the org chart with pictures of all the employees so you can print it off real fast and have an up-to-date org chart whenever you need it. Everything, like I said, can be bulk uploaded via Excel file, so it's quick, no manual entry. So usually if you're using a payroll system, you can download everything into Excel, and then we can go ahead and sort it for you and put it back in. Job description library. So if you have job descriptions that are just kind of floating around, you can organize them and put them all into one place. So you can upload an attachment and then select the position. So what I really like about how this manages the job descriptions easily is that sometimes what the title in the job description versus the title that the employee is using or the title in the payroll system, they might all differ. So to keep track, you actually assign it to a specific title. So let's say we're going to assign it to the director of sales, and maybe it's sales director in the system, and you're trying to sort, and you're looking for S's, but you really should be looking in the director column. This takes care of it so that you're sure that you're assigning the right description to the right position. So in a smaller organization, that might not be an issue, but when we work with organizations that have, 400 or 500 different job titles, that definitely is something that can come into play. So we have a goal library. Now the administrator can also add to the goal library. So for example, if you want everyone in your organization to have some of the same goals that reflect the mission statement, you could go ahead as the administrator, add that, and then everyone would see that in their library, and so the managers could then assign that and weight it appropriately to each of the employees. And let's see here. So another thing that we have is, so all of the goals are weighted and they total 100%, and all of the performance factors are weighted and total 100%. But the ratio between the 200% to bring it together can also be custom weighted. So for example, higher level positions, we usually recommend to have a higher weight on goals. So maybe the goals are weighted 75% and the performance factors would be weighted 25%. Or for more administrative positions, where the position might just not be as amped to goals and to grow in goals, then you would rate the performance factors higher, and the goals could be lower. So all that's customizable. All this theory and logic behind it, we will sit down when we set up the account and discuss that with each of the companies. So like I mentioned, you can create custom factors. You can go ahead and assign different factors by department or job title or employee. The merit option is all there. I'll show you real quick what a merit table looks like. We were talking about that earlier. So this is what we go ahead and, okay, so there's no, oh, I have to go put the budget in. I apologize here. So the setup, everything is custom. So if we go into the merit settings, we could pick a budget. So I'm just going to use 3% because that's usually what the market is doing. So we went ahead and updated that. Then we go back in the merit table. So when we generate the merit table, you can see here we calculated the scores into meeting and exceeding expectations only because for ease of looking at, this is all behind the scenes. The employees don't see this. So basically, depending on your position in the pay range, so if you're under the minimum of the pay range, over the maximum of the pay range, or within the first, second, third, or fourth quartile, and your performance score, the system is going to use this to give you that custom merit recommendation for each employee. So if you have a employee who is exceeding expectations, but they're just low paid for some reason, they came in, they transferred to a higher job, they didn't get a pay increase, whatever the case may be, this is going to recommend a higher increase amount to help bring them closer to the range and where they should be. As well as the opposite. So if you have a high-performing employee, but they're about to reach the max of the pay range, if you gave them a higher percentage, you don't want to artificially put them over the max of the pay range. So it would recommend a lower percentage, but dollar-wise it would still be higher because their salary is higher. So all of this is then customizable. Again, all of this we sit down and go through with you to create a program that is specific to your needs as well as what you're looking for. So just one last slide here real quick. So we are running a promotion with our new partnership with MNA that companies that set up now between now and September 30th, all of the setup fees are waived. So if you're interested, now is the perfect time to go ahead and get started. We can set things in place so that all the goals can be taken care of, and you can go ahead and be on the right foot starting in 2016. So is there any additional questions or comments?
I haven't seen any additional questions, Jennifer. Thank you so much. You were great at explaining it and able to answer those questions right on the spot. So
great.
Thank you.
Just lastly, if anyone wanted pricing based, it's based on the head count. So if you wanted to put a comment in the box, I'll go ahead with your email, and I can go ahead and send you a quote with some information.
Great. Again, as a reminder, don't forget that we have a third webinar in this series where Jennifer and her colleague Jim Donahue will give some suggestions on goal setting for both executives and organizations, and that is on November 16th. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.